I'm being stalked by a serial killer. It started with a note. I found it tucked under my windshield wiper one morning. As I was leaving for work at first, I thought it was just a flyer or some kind of advertisement. But when I unfolded it, my blood ran cold. In neat blocky handwriting it read, "I've been watching you, you're perfect." There was no signature, no name, just those 6 words. I looked around the parking lot, my heart pounding, but there was no one there, just rows of cars and the faint hum of the city waking up. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, trying to convince myself it was just a prank, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. There was something about the way the words were written, so precise, so deliberate, that made my skin crawly. The next day, I found another note. This time, it was taped to my front door. "I love the way you smile when you think no one's looking." I felt a wave of nausea as I read it. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching me from a distance, they were close, too close. I called the police, but they didn't take it seriously. "It's probably just some creep trying to scare you," the officer said. "Keep your doors locked and call us if anything else happens." But something else did happen. The notes kept coming, each one more disturbing than the last. "Your hair looks beautiful in the sunlight. I can't wait to hear you scream. You're mine." I started to feel like I was losing my mind everywhere I went. I felt like I was being watched. I'd catch a glimpse of someone out of the corner of my eye, but when I turned to look, there was no one there. I started double-checking my locks, closing my blinds, carrying pepper spray wherever I went, but no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following me. Then one night I came home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart raced as I pushed it open, my hand trembling on the pepper spray. The living room was dark, but I could see that something was off. The furniture had been moved just slightly, like someone had been searching through my things. I called the police again, and this time they took it more seriously. They dusted for fingerprints and asked me if I'd noticed anyone suspicious hanging around. But there was nothing, no evidence, no leads, just the feeling that someone was always there, just out of sight. The notes stopped for a while after that, and I started to relax. Maybe it was over. Maybe the police presence had scared them off. But then one night, I woke up to the sound of my bedroom window sliding open. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was dark, but I could see the silhouette of someone climbing through the window. They moved slowly, deliberately, like they were savoring the moment. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, but it was gone. I must have left it in the living room. I was trapped. The figure stepped closer, and I could see the glint of something in their hand. A knife. My breath caught in my throat, and I tried to scream, but no sound came out. They leaned over me, their face hidden in shadow, and whispered, "I told you you're mine." I don't know how I did it, but I managed to kick them away and scramble out of bed. I ran for the door, but they were faster. They grabbed me by the hair and yanked me back, slamming me against the wall. I felt the cold edge of the knife against my throat, and I knew I was going to die. But then the sound of sirens filled the air. The figure froze, and for a moment I thought they were going to kill me anyway, but then they let go and ran back to the window, disappearing into the night. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air as the police burst through the door. They'd gotten a call from a neighbor who'd heard the commotion and seen someone climbing through my window. I spent the rest of the night at the police station, giving them every detail I could remember. But it wasn't much. The figure had been wearing a mask, and their voice had been low and distorted, like they were trying to disguise it. The police increased patrols in my neighborhood and told me to stay with a friend for a while. I packed a bag and went to stay with my best friend Sarah. But even though I was out of my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of me taken through the window of Sarah's house. The caption read, "You can't hide from me. You can't hide from me." I showed it to the police, but they couldn't trace the number. It was a burner phone, untraceable. They told me to change my number and stay vigilant, but it didn't help. The texts kept coming. "I'm always watching. You're so beautiful when you're scared. I'll see you soon." I started to feel like I was living in a nightmare. Every time I left the house, I felt like I was being followed. I'd see the same car parked down the street, the same figure standing in the shadows, but every time I called the police, they'd find nothing. Then one night, Sarah and I were watching a movie when we heard a noise outside. We both froze. Listening, there was a soft tapping sound, like someone was running their fingers along the window. Sarah grabbed her phone and called the police. While I peeked through the blinds, there was no one there. But on the window was a message written in what looked like blood. "I'm coming for you." The police came and took a sample of the blood, but they couldn't match it to anyone in their database. They told me to stay inside and keep the doors locked. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Whoever this was, they weren't going to stop it. The next day, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I bought a gun and started carrying it with me everywhere I went. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. If they came for me again, I was going to fight back. That night, I was lying in bed trying to sleep. When I heard the sound of breaking glass, I grabbed the gun and crept out of the bedroom, my heart pounding. The living room was dark, but I could see the shattered remains of the window and the silhouette of someone climbing through. I raised the gun, my hands trembling, and shouted, "Get out of my house!" The figure froze, and for a moment, I thought they were going to run. But then they stepped closer, their face still hidden in shadow. "You're not going to shoot me," they said, their voice low and distorted. "You're too weak." I tightened my grip on the gun, my finger hovering over the trigger. "I'm not weak," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm not going to let you hurt me." They laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent chills down my spine. "You're mine," they said, stepping closer. "You always have been." I pulled the trigger. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the house, and the figure crumpled to the floor. I stood there, my hands still trembling, as the police burst through the door. They found the body of a man in his late 30s. His face hidden behind a mask. In his pocket was a notebook filled with details about me. My schedule, my habits, my fears. He'd been stalking me for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The police told me I was lucky to be alive, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow, like a part of me had died that night too. I moved out of the city after that, trying to put the nightmare behind me. But no matter where I go, I can't shake the feeling that someone's watching me. Every time I hear a noise at night, every time I see a shadow out of the corner of my eye, I feel that same wave of terror of my eye. I feel that same wave of terror. I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again, but I know one thing for sure. I'm not going to be a victim anymore.